The Nature of Predators, Book 2, Chapter 64. Memory transcription subject Tassie by some alien liaison. Date, standardized human time, December 22nd, 2160. The sudden appearance of warp signatures on the sensors drew a lot of attention across the auditorium. Since we knew it wasn't one of the SE members, it was unlikely to be the Shield either. Since the Dirtian founders harbored nothing but disdain for the Kolshians, who else could it be? Riding to the rescue, or was it someone arriving to follow through on Corrigan's prior suggestion of helping the raiders? I watched with a bit of anxiety, fearful that this might be a setback in a tense defense. This was the downside of not being synced into military command, and getting information with a bit of a delay. It was difficult to focus as our vessels kept chipping away at the hostiles, and the formation adjusted to make room for the newcomers. Of course, it must be friendlies. Humanity had to lower the disruptors to let them in, after all. You jump to worries too quickly, Tassie. After everything that's happened since first contact, you become quite swift to assume the worst. Let's hear what the Yodel has to say.
We've lowered the disruptors for a moment, as it appears we're getting unexpected reinforcements. We received a message offering aid in our defensive efforts, Onzo announced, ears pinned back with distaste. That was enough to let my feathers settle a bit, hearing that these reinforcements were a boon to our cause rather than a hindrance. The Federation remnants want to save their precious founders. We'll take the help. But those aggression-loving shits aren't allies I would have chosen.
Secretary General Keifer seemed surprised. I didn't expect our request for them to help us to actually work. The Dresden and the Multi were quite loyal to the Kolshians.
Enough to bomb us. We don't have diplomatic relations with those two for a reason,
Corrigan huffed.
So I'm not surprised to see them spearheading the attack alongside the Yulper and the Shield's own Tevin, whom you do associate with. You know who your friends are, Corrigan. Most of these ships are manned, but we can make use of them. 80,000 craft is a lot, 1,000 per remnant species. She wishes she could have gotten that much support from the SC. I can hear it in her voice. It seems like they sent almost all of their military to 8 Alpha, though they might have ideas about liberating it afterward.
They better not. We can't just let the Kolshians go and go to them, of all people. That will not be tolerated. And after maintaining relations with the Shield, they must know that angering us would be a grave mistake.
That's a problem for after we rout the invaders. You in command has established contact. I'm going to transfer that to the speaker so that we can hear their intentions. It's a great sign that they're willing to work with us.
A human male voice was speaking over the line. Welcome party later. Fall in and fire on the invaders.
No, you owe us answers. Why are the Orcs all here? We can see the fucking banner. Don't dare tell us it's not them, the Yulpa voice shouted, irrational with fury. You do fucking work with those predatory abominations. You let a raiding party in.
Those are drones, not with any carnivore entities aboard. It can't be a raid. It wasn't our first choice, but they came whether we liked it or not. But they're helping. We had no idea that you were coming. There might be a way to keep them away from you. If you want to offer support back here, I'd keep you safe.
Safe? With the Orcs are around, you are fools at best and savages more likely. We're going to do our duty against the enemies of civilized prey folk. You interfere, and we'll put you back on the list of predator sacrifices with them.
Now isn't the time to fight them. Alpha is at stake, and these Orcs you hate could be taken out for you by the current enemies they're fighting. Just listen.
We don't have to listen to any more of your talking. These are the Oxel, who ate and bred sapiens as cattle, and you think that we should wait for them not to be distracted. It's just the same as when you said before the whole galaxy that they would be isolated. And here they are. Either you're in bed with them, bold-faced liars, or you have no semblance of control of them. You can't vouch for them protecting Alpha. This is a golden opportunity to eradicate their ships. There are two enemies here, and by the spirit of life, we're fighting them both.
The Sapien Coalition delegates, including Secretary General Keifer, watched slack-jawed as the Yulpa-led Federation charged against the Arxor. The Multi had rebuilt their old tube-shaped bombers according to a barely composed Onzo, and had them primed to fire. The Terran leader was quickly encircling her new advisors, since that exchange had taken a turn she didn't expect. What should the humans even do about this? They weren't partial to standing against the entire galaxy on the collective's behalf. After all, even their own allies were barely tolerating their escapade. The Carnivore Alliance compelled the Bison Sifka craft to stand up for Kaisel, but we didn't want our ships dragged into this mess. Besides, it was too important to become unfocused from Alpha. The drones had to be stopped, or billions of cautions would die. While some had been evacuated to long-dormant colonies, many had refused to abandon their homes, which would be trading one hellscape for another. The United Nations wavered at the prospect of interference in this remnant assault, given that what would entail starting a war with polity that held just shy of 150 species in its membership. That was the reason Nultor wasn't keen to take them on either. It would set their sights on us as carnivores to become predator sacrifices. Our diet would make it quite easy for them to select us as a target for their hatred. So we all watched the Federation remnants barged into the middle of a tooth-and-nail defense, and the Multi fired hundreds of their bombs onto Orcs or tails.
"Provoking predators," Loxel cackled. "I approve."
General Nultor seemed to have forgotten his directive for the Civkit to remain silent.
"The Orcs are your allies."
"Yes and no, if finally getting interesting. Prey versus baleful beast, a contest which will confiscate all the rapturous menaces. The Forever Walkers are enfeebled and do not assess themselves. Their lack of viciousness is an endless source of disappointment, though Nishtal showed a flicker of the wall savages with their storied past. However, they are tame. But the Orcs will not bear such insults."
"Yes, I doubt anything less than retaliation would cross their minds," Zoc scoffed. "Nevertheless, the Orcs are at a 2-to-1 deficit. Even having drones, that is a massive disadvantage."
"Until the prey become frightful and scatter, for they cannot fathom the guileful ways of the Carcass Carabers. That excludes the Dorman humans, choosing parleys before predatory tetchness. Of course, this contest will bring only misery to the rabble-rousing gabble, though the Multi's entrails shall be liquefied to flotsam with real casualties. They shall rue the day."
"You sound like you want them to get clobbered by the Greys."
"It is not about that. I upbraid you for suggesting so, simpleton. Can you entertain or not be excited by the prospect of bona fide casualties? Barely nigh they are. Barely nigh, I say."
As Loxel waxed poetic about the disaster of epic proportions unfolding, the Terrans were anything but amused. What should have been an infusion of allies that gave us overwhelming odds was breaking out into infighting. The Orcs were weaning away from the unknown enemy where possible, though they couldn't turn every ship without becoming easy pickings for the invading drones. The Jodel and Vendel stepped up and got into the hostiles' faces, despite the fact the former had been keeping back. They didn't want to witness an utter breakdown in our formation, as the two sides began throwing shots at each other and at the invaders. A three-way bout. Some SE vessels were caught in the middle or forced out of position to avoid crossfire. "We need to defuse the situation," Secretary General Keifer hurriedly placed an outgoing call onto the screen. As she'd seemed to decide that the Orcs might listen, there was little chance of getting through to the Federation. "I'm going to offer concessions to stop our forces from tearing each other to pieces. Time is of the essence. We're open to ideas, if you want to approach our staffers."
"How dare you!"
Kaisel's indignant face appeared and roared words, fangs bared like he wanted to rip Keifer to shreds. I noticed several SE delegates trembled at his appearance, binocular eyes narrowing to yellow slits.
"We come to help you save this worthless planet, and your friends shoot us while you do nothing to stop them."
"I understand your anger, and I am deeply sorry. Look, we don't know what to do, but we do know we don't want another galactic war between our entities. I'm asking you to disengage rather than lose valuable ships and lives needlessly. Retreat from the system for now, and we could bring you back after."
"You spineless weak-bloods! You're siding with prey folk that hate you and dream of a day they can wipe you from existence instead of us. After we've stood by your side time and again, they attacked our ships without provocation. And you want me to roll my belly up before the watchful eyes of my subservients, to let them shoot us in the back, losing thousands of ships unanswered? Never! We won't!"
"Kaisel, we'll personally replace every ship you've lost, if you just don't return fire now. You have every right to retaliate later, should you feel it's worthwhile to go up against 3 digits worth of species again, though I don't think any of us are eager to repeat the past. What you call weakness is us trying to keep peace.
We're strong enough to know fighting is not worth the cost. Loss of life isn't worth it. Let us rebuild your ships, and at least for today, preserve Alpha. You won't give the Arcs ships. You'll let their fleet die so that you can have an excuse to send us back into exile. Humans never go against the prey. They make your decisions for you.
That is absolutely untrue. We work hand in hand with our allies and are unyielding in our goals of peace and progress. We do keep our promises, like how we stopped them from wiping you out post-war in the first place. Who else do you think thought your lives were worthy of sparing at all, for better of future? Is that weakness, Geisel? The Arcs' breaths were strained from fury.
What a great concession, Secretary General. You let us live. I guess we're forever in your debt, despite the fact that you wouldn't have won your war without us, and humanity would be dead. Have you all forgotten what you owe us? Shoot those Federation mulers.
I can't do that, Geisel. After our offer is preserved, we can talk about it, though. We'll appreciate all of your help.
I tire of your talking leaf liquor. If you won't fight beside us, there is nothing to say. The Federation idiots must be dealt with, and you're mad to think that you'll ever have peace with them. Pretend you're like your brave friends all you want. They won't abide your existence. We will.
The Arcs disconnected from the call, and these drones ramped up the attack on the remnants simultaneously. They carved up the multi-tube bombers with prejudice using their railguns, while also zipping towards the Yupa ships, the same class used to capture predators from across the galaxy. The invading drones had turned their focus away from the two powers, who were busy killing themselves, and went for discombobulated SG ships. Those friendlies were herded back towards where the Collective and Feds were fighting, so that they'd be cut down by friendly fire. The humans had made no indication to step in on any side. There was also no time to retreat back towards Alpha, since the invaders were pressing towards the UN formation at full speed. On Nalto's holopad, I saw a Bison ship wander into an Arc's plasma beam, before getting rammed by a slew of multi-missiles intended for a reptilian target. The Collective drones had the nerve to duck behind our vessels, using it as a shield. The Salmo general looked furious, before he decided to be the first to call for a retreat. If the Greys were using us as covers, then we'd use their chaotic firefight as interference to get out of here. Various Sapien Coalition members now saw our departure from the shit show, and a few joined in. The Jotun and the Vendel were getting cut down without support. After attracting the enemy's attention, and the humans had lost a few thousand ships to friendly fire, the chatter across the room rose in pitch, as leaders and representatives called for their species' forces to be pulled out. The invaders pressed past Kauta, pushing the SE back towards Alpha. What was left of our defensive line faltered, desperately spitting munitions to acquire any room to backpedal. The hostile drones had spotted an opportunity to break us altogether, popping off a few well-placed antimatter warheads to scramble our forces even further. The battleground was quickly becoming every one for themselves, without any semblance of cohesion. The humans, Jotun and Vendel, soon wouldn't have any of those 15,000 SU ships to back them up. The Crocodile seemed like the only ones in this hall who were right to die with the UN today. The Greys and the Remnants were still cleaving through each other's vessels, only turning an occasional glance towards the invaders. They'd both lost tens of thousands of ships and didn't seem to be helping us any longer. The Terrans can't fight the enemy alone, and there's no mounting any resistance with the Remnants and Arcs slaughtering each other. I think Kynver is about to call for a retreat, trying to save whatever ships she can and hope to regroup. Half of the United Nations vessels are down. I feel we may have to consider what we can send to the next engagement with these drones. There wasn't enough Allied participation here before, and what little we had is up in smoke, Kynver sighed, evident frustration seeping through in a rare display. We're going to unload every antimatter missile and remaining explosive we have to cover our retreat. Run as far as we can until we have a chance to prepare for warp.
What's to stop them from chasing us? They're breathing down our necks,
the Harkon ambassador called out. They won't come for us if we head away from the planet. Everyone who's already ducked the fray, just head to the system's outskirts. To think we apologized to the Yupa. I hope they're happy with what they've done. Screw all of this. There is never any option to be moral or just in this organization. You can expect my resignation when I get back to Earth. The Secretary General stormed out of the auditorium, evidently unable to corral her anger at the Yupa and the Arcs alike. The shock of having a Terran leader erupt in anger and announced that she was through with the Sapien Coalition stirred quite a buzz throughout the chamber, with the humans walking out amid a war meeting. I knew that Alpha was as good as gone when they gave up the defense of a planet, chalking it up as a loss. There was no one left to fight for it. The SC ships hurled everything they had, trying to blow everything in their immediate wake sky high to facilitate an escape. I barely registered the mines and cloaked stations that tried to cut down the few bombers, or the lost Oxon remnants duking it out as the enemy, having moved well past Cato, ignored them. Having fallen into disunity and division, the Sapien Coalition's forces here were the antithesis of what we saw at Nishtal. They'd collapsed beneath the weight of old feuds that flared up at the wrong time. I couldn't blame Kaifa for walking out in disgust, since we were seeing hideous pandemonium play out despite the highest stakes. The powerful lasers on the Alpha's moons were still under UN control and aimed into the heart of the hostile fleet. However, they achieved very little against an enemy's liquid armor. It proved a simple waltz into orbit to blanket the world below in a hail of explosions. Unimpeded, the final flank of the drone assault did what they'd come to do. Fiery plumes dotted the planet's surface as the SE delegates watched billions die on the screen. There weren't enough expressions of horror and mournfulness for the Colchians. I wish that we'd been able to do more, fighting with what we had, but our efforts had been sabotaged from within. Our few hundred ships wouldn't have made a difference alone, and Bisoms had to protect our own world. It was clear that the Sapien Coalition couldn't always be relied upon to come together. Even the Orcs, who promised to stand with us in the Carnivore Alliance, prioritized prize and reprisal over the great good. We had to get our affairs in order, or else Alpha could be only the first planet to suffer for the galaxy's disorder. I wasn't sure what would come of this humiliating defeat, but I knew that relations in the Orion Arm were complicated. The Collective and the Remnants had fired the first shots on a new war, and the SC just proved that they weren't the least bit ready to grapple with the fallout. I hoped the powerful, peacemaking humanity who'd shown up in Nishtal, emboldened by the support and diversity of their allies, would find their way back into this foreign's home. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.